Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fought Like Hell. Each week, we bring you stories of survivors, people who endured tragedy, disasters, and violence, and found the strength to keep going. Hi.
Hi.
How's it going?
Quite well, actually. It's an exciting first day in the podcast, you know?
Yeah, it's our first episode. We've spent like 5 hours trying to get everything set up. Hopefully it works well.
3 positions later, we're on the couch.
We are on the couch. It's a lot more comfier. I think the problem was being at the table. My back was really hurting, so now I'm nice and cuddled up and snuggled and ready to talk some crazy survivor story.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah.
I'm ready to jump right into it.
Okay. Well, since this is our first episode, my name's Jordan, and I have dragged my lovely husband into this with me.
And I'm the husband.
It's like our favorite podcast, Murder with My Husband. I'm just going to put it all together. I didn't want to do this by myself, and you're easy to talk to. So
Thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing it.
thank you for joining me.
Of course.
Okay. Wow. What's your name, husband?
My name's Connor.
You have anything fun to share before we dive in?
We have 2 cats.
We do. Taz and Bean.
So if you hear cats meowing, they're not in danger or anything like that.
One likes to scream at us, and the other one likes to be a ball in our business. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and dive in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Episode 1, we're learning.
Yeah.
So there are only a handful of moments in history so powerful that they alter the course of the world forever. Moments we can never forget. So today we're going to dive into a story of a young girl who survived one of the most unforgettable events in history. It's a moment the world is still fascinated by, one that completely changed the course of humanity, and somehow she lived to tell the tale. Do you want to take any guesses on what we're talking about?
Well, my immediate guess is Japan, and guess World War II?
You're correct. All right, so the year is 1945. World War II was finally coming to an end. I don't know if it's just because I'm so young, but I have no grasp on when World War II actually happened, but why did I think it happened in the 60s?
Oh, baby, there was a lot of things that went on in the 60s, and World War II wasn't one of them.
I guess 1945 feels so far away that to think of people who were there and still alive blows my mind.
But it's still not that far away. I mean, that was like our
80 years ago.
our great-grandfathers.
Yeah. Germany has surrendered in Europe. The world was exhausted, and nations were beginning to rebuild. The United Nations was founded. Colonial empires were starting to lose their grip, and a new nuclear age was just beginning. But in the Pacific, the fighting continued until a single event changed everything: the bombing of Hiroshima. I think it's interesting. I wanted to choose this one because Barbenheimer happened, and I just thought about how intrigued we still are about this event that happened 80 years ago. Today we're going to dive into the inspiring story of Setsuko Thurlow. So Setsuko was born on January 3rd, 1932 in Hiroshima, Japan. She was the youngest of 7 children. A bright-eyed girl who grew up in Hiroshima, her summer smelled of tatami mats warmed by the sun. She remembers her mother folding laundry by an open window, her father tapping ash from his pipe, the sound of bicycle bells on narrow streets. Even in wartime, her family clung to the smallest blessings, a warm meal, a shared laugh, the stubborn song of cicadas. Barely 5 years into her life, Setsuko's world was already consumed by war. The Second Sino-Japanese War erupted, Japan's brutal conflict with China that would soon spiral into the global catastrophe we know as World War II. At just 13 years old, Setsuko wasn't in a classroom anymore. Like so many students her age, she'd been drafted into Japan's wartime mobilization program and given clerical work for the military. That's crazy. Can you think about that?
I don't think women in the United States were drafted.
Yeah, she's 13. And I think women in the United States were doing...
like nursing and clerical work still, but I don't think they were like outright drafted. But I guess Japan was like running out of oil and metal, and their economy was pretty much crumbling because they couldn't sustain mass wartime.
Yeah, this is the Second Sino-Japanese War, so they had already been through one.
But after war, if you're on the losing
Right.
side, you're not in a good economical state to...
Right. Can you imagine being in that state, entering into a war? And of course, so many things happened in World War II, so many different moving pieces that we won't completely dive into, but this merged with World War II. But she was only 13 years old.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And she was doing clerical work for the military. Her days were spent in a small office, helping with decoding paper, filing papers, sorting communications, and delivering messages to typists. The room smelled of ink and wood polish, and though the work was repetitive, it felt important. She sat up straight at her desk, proud to be trusted with adult responsibilities. Aren't we all?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
I think if I was 13 and I was trusted with something like that, I'd be so proud. Like, I'd be like, heck yeah, I'm doing adult stuff.
When I was 14, I was like, yeah, I want to get a job. Not what I thought it was, but,
It's very different work from, like, summer camp.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or lifeguarding.
Yeah.
Each morning, she walked through the summer streets in her navy blue uniform, chatting with classmates about family or school gossip, before settling into the study hall of their wartime duty, which I think is such like a wholesome detail because they're still kids and laughing and still living their life, even though it's in the midst of chaos. For Setsuko, the work was a mix of pride and pressure. She wanted to do well. Her teachers expected it. The officers expected it. At that time, obedience wasn't just encouraged, it was demanded. None of the students could have imagined that this very room, the desks, the papers, the maps pinned to the wall would become a death trap in an instant. On the morning of August 6, 1945, nothing seemed unusual. The sun was already pressing down, and Setsuko was on the second floor of a wooden building with about 30 other schoolgirls. The room was quiet, with just the sound of shuffling papers breaking the silence, and a couple whispers from classmates throughout the day. At exactly 8:15 in the morning, everything changed. A blinding bluish-white light tore through the skies, so intense it swallowed the room. In the next instant, the building shuddered violently as the earth itself exploded beneath it. The force lifted her off her feet and hurled her roughly 10 feet into the wreckage, trapping her beneath broken beams. Then it went dark. She didn't know how long she was unconscious. It may have been minutes or longer. When she came to, her head was pounding and her ears rang so loudly, it was as if the world itself had gone quiet. She laid there, disoriented, the shrill ringing filling every corner of her mind. Slowly, other sounds began to creep in, muffled at first, and then clear.
Yeah, I think I would be terrified of that. That would, like, being trapped and not being able to move and not being able to, like, have your senses is terrifying.
Well, just think how fast it happened, too. Just one moment she's sitting there at her desk doing her job, and the next she's being hurled in the air. I don't even know if your brain has time to process what's going on.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I can't imagine. It has to be terrifying. She realized she could barely breathe. Dust and smoke scratched at her lungs with every shallow gasp. The world around her was pitch black. Beams pressed down on her body and splinters dug into her skin. And then the voices broke through. The girls who had been right beside her only moments earlier were still there. But now their words came as faint cries from under the rubble. Mother, help me. God, help me. The voices were fragile, slipping away, but they cut into her in a way she would never forget. She tried to move, but the debris pinned her down. The panic burned in her chest. Then through the chaos, a soldier's voice rang out. Don't give up. Keep pushing. Crawl towards the light. These words became her lifeline. Setsuko crawled against the shattered wood, splinters cutting into her hands as she dragged herself inch by inch towards a faint glow. Dust, smoke, stung her eyes. Her heart pounded, and then finally, cool air touched her face. She stumbled out into a world she could hardly recognize. What had been a bright summer morning now looked like twilight, the sun swallowed by a rising cloud of smoke and ash. A heavy orange haze swallowed the city. Streets she had walked every single day were now gone, flattened into rubble. The ordinary sounds of city, bicycle bells, children's chatter had been replaced by the cries of the dying. The soldier who saved her didn't stop. He rushed on to pull others from the wreckage. His name was lost in history, but his words were not. For the rest of her life, she carried them with her. Don't give up. Keep pushing. Crawl towards the light. People staggered through the ruined streets, arms stretched out in front of them. She said that their skin was burned and hanging in strips, and that their hair was sticking up straight. Even the clothes they had been wearing left their mark. The flash of heat was so intense it seared dark patterns into their skin, leaving behind shapes of flowers and geometric designs as burns. Have you seen the videos of what imprints it does?
The shadows.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Setsuko searched desperately for the girls who had been beside her only moments earlier, but the building behind her was already engulfed in flames. Of the 30 or so students working in that office room, only a handful actually survived. Many were tracked and killed instantly. Across her school, 351 classmates and teachers never came home. Setsuko was 1.1 mile away from the hypocenter of where the bomb went off. That close in, the odds of survival are slim. Almost every building within a mile of ground zero was instantly flattened. Roughly 90% of the people at Setsuko's distance died. So about only 10% survived. They died immediately, either crushed, burned, or from the force of the blast. The bomb's heat was so intense it caused burns up to 2.5 to 3 miles away. She's 1.1 miles from the center. So I can't imagine how everything looked around her if 3 times that distance away, people are still getting burned from the blast. Houses were leveled nearly 2 miles in every direction, and glass shattered more than 10 miles out.
That's crazy.
The fact that she was pulled from the rubble when so many of her classmates and neighbors never made it out was nothing short of a miracle and a testament to her sheer will to survive. Down by the river, survivors waded into the water, trying to cool their wounds. Someone handed her a sip of water, but another took it away quickly. Too much, they warned, could be fatal. She wandered through the streets that no longer had names, past houses flattened to the ground. She made her way back to her family's house, but it was completely destroyed. Somehow, though, her parents and some of her siblings had survived the blast. They were among the few familiar faces she found that day. Setsuko later described this reunion as a rare blessing in the middle of unimaginable horror, because so many families in Hiroshima never saw each other again. Though she survived being buried in the rubble, Setsuko was badly hurt. Splinters and broken wood tore into her skin as she crawled free, leaving cuts across her hands and arms. Her body was bruised and shaken from the blast, and in the days that followed, she suffered many of the same symptoms that haunted others. Her hair began falling out in clumps, and her gums bled whenever she tried to eat. But what terrified her the most was the possibility that purple spots would begin to appear on her skin. Those spots weren't just bruises. They were the mark of deadly radiation poisoning, and everyone knew it was almost always a sign that recovery wasn't going to be possible. Medical help was almost non-existent. The survivors, like Setsuko, were studied more than treated. Yet despite the sickness and exhaustion, she kept pushing forward, carrying wounds that were both physical and invisible. When the bomb struck Hiroshima, the scale of destruction was almost beyond comprehension. In an instant, 70 to 80,000 people were killed, outright burned, crushed, or vaporized in the blast. By the end of 1945, the number had roughly doubled to 140,000 as burns, injuries, and radiation sickness took their toll. Another 70,000 were left injured, many of them with wounds so severe they would never fully recover. Out of the population of 350,000 people, nearly 2/3 of the city's people were either killed or wounded in a single moment. And within Setsuko's own family, 8 lives were gone. Setsuko's home was destroyed, and her community was gone. Everything she had known had been burned away in an instant. Her life was forever changed, and so was the world. In the days after the bombing, Setsuko and the other survivors in Hiroshima were still struggling to make sense of what had happened to them. Then came the news. Just 3 days later, another bomb had dropped. This time, in Nagasaki.
Did you hear about the story about the guy who was there in Hiroshima and fled to Nagasaki?
Oh, I can't imagine.
He lived through both bombs, though.
Wow. I cannot imagine trying to get to someplace safe and it happens again. I would live in constant fear.
I think he did.
Don't blame him. For Setsuko, it was almost too much to comprehend. Hiroshima was still burning, and now she was hearing about another city filled with families just like her had suffered the same fate. She later said that it was profoundly shocking. To her, it felt like unimaginable cruelty, that one bomb hadn't been enough, that the world had chosen to unleash the horror against Japan before Japan even had time to respond. That moment deepened her conviction. What she had witnessed wasn't just personal tragedy or Hiroshima's tragedy. It was part of something bigger. Both Hiroshima and Nagasaki carried the same unbearable scars. Still, she pushed forward. Her parents reminded her daily that she had survived for a reason. She clung to that. They urged her to live, and she obeyed. She went back to school, even when memories of that morning made it difficult to sit in the classroom again. I can't imagine the PTSD. I am at a loss for words to how a girl so young, at just 13 years old, I don't know when she went back to school, had to then essentially relive every day what was like the worst day of her life. She began learning English, realizing it could be more than just another subject. For her, language became a lifeline, a way to cross oceans and connect with people who had no idea what really happened in Hiroshima. She wanted them to know. She wanted them to see what she had seen, to understand what it meant to live through a morning when the world had ended. English gave her a way to carry words, her story, beyond Japan, and it planted the seed for the voice she would one day use on the world stage. I do think about that too. I'm always on TikTok, and I feel like I can see what's going on around the world just from my phone, but there was no technology like that. So People didn't really get to hear these stories in real time. You had to wait for somebody to come out and say something and speak up. In 1954, Setsuko traveled to the United States to study. That very week that she arrived, the U.S. tested a hydrogen bomb in the Marshall Islands, a weapon more than 1,000 times stronger than the one that destroyed Hiroshima. Hearing that news brought all of her old fears rushing back, but instead of breaking her, it lit a fire. She realized survival wasn't just about making it through the blast. It was about giving her survival meaning. She eventually built a new life in Canada, working as a social worker, spending her days sitting with people in pain, just as others had once sat with her. But she never left her story behind. She joined other survivors who also refused to stay silent. Together they spoke, they wrote, they traveled, they lobbied, doing whatever they could do to make the world listen. They didn't just want to talk about the flash and the fire of the morning. They talked about what came after, the sickness that lingered for years, the families left with empty chairs at their tables, the way an entire city could disappear in an instant. Her voice began to carry far beyond Japan. She became a leading force in the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons. With her allies, she brought the words of survivors into the halls of power, sharing her stories at the United Nations and at conferences around the world. Over the years, her work didn't go unnoticed. Canada honored her with the Order of Canada, one of the highest civilian awards you can receive. She received the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal for her service. Around the world, she was recognized too, named Arms Control Person of the Year, awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and even given an honorary doctorate from the University of Toronto. Each honor was a reminder that her voice carried weight, that her story mattered, and that all of it built towards the moment in 2017 when she stood on the world stage to accept the Nobel Peace Prize on behalf of ICAN. She told the story of the soldier who saved her, repeating his words for all to hear. Don't give up, keep pushing, crawl towards the light. Then she shared the truth she had carried since childhood, that humanity and nuclear weapons cannot coexist. She now lives in Toronto, where earlier she built her career as a social worker and raised her family. She married historian Jim Thurlow in 1950, and they had 2 sons and later grandchildren. Her husband supported her work until his passing in 2011. Her advocacy didn't stop evolving. In recent years, she continued to lend her voice to schools, conferences, and media around the world, still pushing for global awareness and legal action against nuclear weapons. Setsuko Thurlow's story shows that survival is more than endurance. It's a choice, made again and again. She carried the darkest morning of her life and turned it into a guiding light for the world. Through her voice, the cries of her classmates, the memory of her city, and the hope of peace to live on, so that no child ever has to call through such darkness again.
Wow. That's a big story.
It's really powerful.
Oh, yeah.
What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's a very powerful story. I don't know if I would have reacted any better than that. I think she's a very strong woman, like it's a very hard thing to go through at any age, especially at 13. And to take that and pick yourself up by your bootstraps and want change and advocate for change is an important thing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. She could have wallowed in that pain, depression, anxiety, and she decided to do something with her life and use it as fuel. I think that's really powerful. That's empowering and inspiring. I wanted to choose a historic event for our first one because I know you're interested in the history and all that. I found her and I didn't know that she was a Nobel Peace Prize winner, and she's still alive.
Yeah? How old is she now?
She's 93. Wow.
Still kicking.
Still kicking. And being that close to the
blast.
To the blast, I mean, like radiation is inevitable,
I wonder if being in the building helped at all,
Yeah, it said it was a wood building, so not like a concrete building.
It didn't help it too much, but it's better than being outside.
Yeah, well, she was knocked unconscious under rubble And then there were soldiers there to help. So it makes me wonder, I mean, obviously the soldiers couldn't have been there too, otherwise they would also be trapped. And so
Yeah.
how long was she under the rubble before?
I wonder
She
how
came
far the
to.
house was away.
I don't know. It was destroyed, so it had to have been a couple miles from the blast site. But it also brings up a interesting conversation we had earlier this year whenever the conflict between Pakistan and India was getting a little intense, of like, if everybody has the ability to set off a nuke, and not everybody does it, but if two countries have nuclear weapons, it's almost like a stalemate, because the first one to shoot is going to get obliterated. Like, the world could end from how many nuclear weapons we have. So it's almost like you can't use them, right?
Yeah, that's the point. It's a theory called MAD, mutually assured destruction, to where if you do something, I'm going to respond. And it'll be not just what you do, I'm going to do something worse, pretty much. And it's like they keep escalating, is what it is. So, like, if you send one nuke at me, I'm sending 2 nukes at you. And then it goes on until no one's left.
And I don't think anybody wants the entire world to just be completely obliterated, including themselves and their own population.
Well, I think it's a human characteristic to want to stay alive, you know?
Very much so.
I think there's only like a handful of nations. I think there's only like 13 nations with nukes.
But every side of the aisle has it, right?
9 nations.
Guess not.
But any bomb now is 10 times the size of what Hiroshima and Nagasaki were, you know?
That's true. Well, I hope you enjoyed this story.
I did. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
So, tune back in with us to hear a story of a survivor who survived through
Something.
Mother Nature.
Bye, y'all.
Love y'all.